Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Liberty Wave News. Today we're diving deep into one of the most shocking and symbolic moments in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. The explosion on the Crimea Bridge and the furious reaction it triggered from Vladimir Putin. This event didn't just shake the bridge that links mainland Russia to Crimea, it shook the very image of Putin's control, authority, and pride. In this video we'll break down what actually happened, why the bridge is so crucial, how Russia responded, and what this means for the future of the war. The Crimea Bridge, also known as the Kerch Bridge, has always been more than just a piece of infrastructure. For Putin, it was a personal triumph, a powerful symbol of Russia's claim over Crimea, which was annexed from Ukraine in 2014. Stretching almost 19 kilometers across the Kerch Strait, it connected Russia directly with the Crimean Peninsula, cementing what the Kremlin wanted the world to see as a permanent union. Built at a cost of around $3.7 billion, Putin himself inaugurated the bridge in 2018 by driving a truck across it. For him, it was a statement, Crimea is ours and we're here to stay. That's why the explosion that tore through the bridge wasn't just an attack on infrastructure, it was an attack on Putin's pride, power, and narrative. When the explosion happened, the images spread like wildfire across the world. Flames engulfed a section of the road deck, while a train carrying fuel tankers burned on the parallel rail line. Massive plumes of black smoke rose over the Kerch Strait as parts of the bridge collapsed into the water. For Ukrainians, it was a moment of celebration, an almost cinematic strike against one of the most symbolic targets in the war. For Russia, it was humiliation. The explosion exposed the vulnerability of something Putin had personally guaranteed as untouchable. It shattered the illusion of total control, and that's what made him furious. Initially, Moscow's reaction was confusion and denial. Russian officials rushed to downplay the scale of the damage, claiming it was only a truck explosion and that repairs were already underway. But as more footage emerged, it became impossible to hide the extent of the destruction. Traffic came to a halt, supply lines were disrupted, and the bridge's security came under international scrutiny for a regime that thrives on projecting strength. This was an embarrassing blow. Putin, who prides himself on his image as a decisive and unflappable leader, suddenly found himself mocked on social media, and even by his own nationalist commentators, who demanded revenge and accountability. What made Putin especially angry wasn't just the physical damage, it was the symbolism. The bridge represented his greatest geopolitical gamble, the annexation of Crimea. Losing it, even temporarily, meant losing face. It made him look weak, and weakness is something he cannot afford, especially with the war not going as planned. Putin's circle of loyalists, military officials, and propagandists quickly shifted gears, calling the explosion a terrorist act carried out by Ukraine. Within hours, Putin ordered a full-scale investigation, and within days, he unleashed a wave of missile strikes on Ukrainian cities in retaliation. This retaliation was one of the most intense bombing campaigns since the start of the war. Missiles and drones rained down on Kyiv, Lviv, Dnipro, and other major cities, targeting power plants, water systems, and civilian infrastructure. The message was clear. Anyone who humiliates Russia will face devastating consequences. But while these strikes caused massive suffering, they didn't change the military balance. Ukraine's resolve only hardened, and its Western allies doubled down on their support. Behind the scenes, Putin's anger wasn't just directed at Ukraine, it was also directed inward. Reports emerged of growing tensions within his inner circle. Military commanders and intelligence officers were blamed for failing to secure the bridge, and questions arose about how such a massive security failure could happen under the watchful eye of Russia's powerful FSB. For Putin, who built his image on total control and competence, the explosion exposed cracks in his system. Even Russian state media, usually loyal to the Kremlin's line, struggled to spin the story positively. Some anchors called it a wake-up call, while others demanded stronger measures against Ukraine. Western intelligence analysts pointed out that the bridge's destruction had more than symbolic value. It severely disrupted Russia's military logistics. The bridge was the main supply route for moving troops, fuel, and ammunition from Russia to Crimea and onward to southern Ukraine. Without it, Russia's southern front became more vulnerable. Supplies had to be rerouted through occupied territories or via ferries, both of which were slower and more exposed to attack for Ukrainian forces. This was a strategic victory. It weakened Russia's ability to sustain its occupation in the south and gave Ukraine a psychological boost at a critical moment in the war. Putin's angry reaction was also a reflection of the growing pressure he faces at home, with the war dragging on and casualties mounting. The Russian public's patience has been wearing thin. The Kremlin has tightly controlled information, but even propaganda has limits. The image of a burning bridge broadcast across the internet shattered the illusion of invincibility that Putin's regime had worked so hard to maintain. The question many Russians began asking quietly was, If the government can't even protect the Crimea Bridge, what else is vulnerable? Internationally, the explosion also shifted dynamics. Western nations saw it as a turning point, a sign that Ukraine could strike deep into territories Russia considered secure. The attack, whether directly executed by Ukrainian special forces or indirectly supported through intelligence cooperation with allies, demonstrated a level of sophistication that caught Moscow off guard. It also sent a powerful message: no target inside occupied Ukraine is beyond reach. In response, Putin staged public appearances that were carefully choreographed to project calm and control. He appeared on television, signing decrees and promising swift justice. Yet his expressions, analysts noted, were unusually tense. His rhetoric grew harsher, filled with words like revenge, terror, and inevitable punishment. Behind closed doors, reports indicated that he was furious, not only because of the attack, but because it made him appear powerless in front of both his enemies and his own people. In Russia's political culture, especially under Putin, appearances are everything. Losing face can be more damaging than losing territory. The restoration of the bridge became a top priority for the Kremlin. Engineers worked around the clock under heavy security, and within a few months, Russia announced the bridge had been fully repaired. Putin even made another trip to personally inspect it, hoping to reclaim the image of strength and control. But by then, the psychological damage was already done. The world had seen that even Putin's most prized infrastructure could be hit. The illusion of absolute security was gone forever. What followed was a shift in Putin's military strategy. He intensified attacks on Ukrainian energy grids, aiming to plunge the country into darkness and cold. This was his form of revenge. If he couldn't protect his bridge, he would make Ukraine pay a heavy price. But rather than breaking Ukrainian morale, these actions only strengthened international condemnation of Russia. More Western weapons, including advanced air defense systems, were delivered to Ukraine. In many ways, the Crimea Bridge explosion marked the beginning of a new phase in the war, one defined not just by battles on the ground, but by psychological and symbolic warfare. It's also important to understand how this incident impacted global perceptions. For many outside observers, the explosion symbolized the fragility of authoritarian power. Putin, who had long projected himself as an unshakable strongman, suddenly appeared vulnerable. His furious response was not just political, it was deeply personal. Those who have followed Putin's career know how much he values symbols, from his carefully staged photo ops to his speeches invoking Russian pride. Every move he makes is about image. The Crimea Bridge was his monument to victory, and watching it burn was like watching his own legacy crack apart. The explosion also raised serious questions about Russia's military capabilities. If such a critical structure could be attacked under the Kremlin's nose, what did that say about the effectiveness of its defense systems? The event exposed weaknesses that Western intelligence agencies had long suspected: inefficiencies, corruption, and poor coordination between military and security branches. It became another reminder that Russia's power, though formidable on paper, was riddled with internal flaws. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the reaction was one of cautious triumph. Officials didn't officially claim responsibility, but social media was flooded with memes, celebrations, and patriotic songs for Ukrainians who had endured months of bombings, displacement, and terror. The image of the burning bridge became a symbol of justice, a reminder that even mighty Russia could be made to bleed. President Volodymyr Zelensky hinted subtly at Ukrainian involvement, calling the event the beginning and saying that everything illegal must eventually fall apart. Putin's angry reaction, though predictable, also had consequences for his own regime. The more he lashed out, the more isolated Russia became. His threats' escalation, whether nuclear rhetoric or mass mobilization, only deepened Russia's international isolation. Domestically, the fear and paranoia inside the Kremlin increased. Security was tightened, dissent was crushed more aggressively, and loyalty tests became more extreme. Yet the harder Putin tried to control everything, the more evident his insecurities became. Months after the explosion, intelligence reports continued to suggest that the bridge remained a vulnerable target. Despite repairs, Ukraine managed to launch additional attacks on it, proving that Russia could never fully secure it. Each new hit was another psychological wound to the Kremlin, reminding Putin that control over Crimea, and indeed over Ukraine, was far from absolute. As the war drags on, the Crimea Bridge explosion stands as one of its most defining moments. It combined military precision with symbolic power, striking not just concrete and steel, but also the heart of Putin's narrative. It showed that wars aren't only fought with tanks and missiles, they're also fought with images, morale, and meaning. The burning bridge became a metaphor for a collapsing empire, for a leader whose confidence is cracking under the weight of his own ambitions. So when we talk about Putin's angry reaction, it's not just about rage, it's about fear. Fear of losing control, fear of looking weak, and fear of history turning against him. His fury was the fury of a man watching his own myth unravel. The explosion didn't just destroy a structure, it ignited a psychological battle that still shapes the war today. And as we continue to watch events unfold, one thing remains clear. The Crimea Bridge explosion was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter in this conflict. A chapter where symbolism matters as much as strategy, and where every act of defiance echoes louder than any speech. For Putin, the bridge was supposed to be eternal. For Ukraine, it became a message: nothing built on stolen land will stand forever. Thank you for watching Liberty Wave News. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on the latest developments from the Russia-Ukraine conflict and beyond.